to the chat.
I'm launching. Not yet. Oh, here we are. Good.
There's the sound of Mozart.
Okay, you are live, Greg.
Not showing it yet. Are you certain,
You don't see it?
Mr.?
No?
No, I don't see it yet.
Yeah, I got you live here.
I see it now.
Oh, okay. Probably took a
See it
moment.
yet? I see it now.
Okay.
Give me a minute.
Uh-huh.
Give me a minute. I'll be right back.
Okay, Greg.
All right, young man, I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay, gentlemen, here we go. And take it, Greg.
Welcome, everyone. It is 6:11 on Monday night. You're listening to the 237th installment of the Age Out Angels Radio Hour, right here on www.hamiltonradio.net Channel 2. I'm your host, Greg Rapport. If you're new to the show, I'm the founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. We provide one-to-one mentors to vulnerable youth for the purpose of coordinating the care and services that they need to thrive. We try to help young people avoid some of the horrible pitfalls that they're likely to face when they don't have a proper safety net. This program is brought to you every week at the same time, courtesy of all the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. Ruben is on the big board tonight. Robin is producing. As always, both of you, so good to have you here and with me. And so good to have you listening from your computers or in your cars in New Jersey, around the country and beyond. Now, please take a moment. If you're looking at us on Facebook or YouTube, and hit the buttons for me. We need you to like and subscribe. What I'm going to tell you tonight should be absolute required training for every PTA, every school board. It's just amazing that this information is not out in the public zone, but this is the only place you can come to get it right now, okay? So I need you to like and share and subscribe and whatever we need to do to get these numbers up so that people will learn about this and start protecting our children. Tonight, we're going to focus more on keeping our children safe from child sex offenders. What a strange phrase that is. I've wrestled with that. I have to tell you the whole week, because when you say child sex offenders, it assumes that it is a child, meaning, I guess you get an image in your mind of certainly someone below teenage years committing the sexual offenses. And in some cases, it actually is that. I mean, that does take place. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is adults who commit sexual offenses on children, against children. And lots of times we're talking about very young age children, 0 to 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. Okay, this is a part where it is extremely prevalent, where your child is extremely vulnerable, and when it happens at that super young age, it creates a deeper problem that lasts throughout the whole person's life, okay? We meet these people when they are 17, 18, 19, 21 years old, and there's a devastating effect. But it doesn't just happen among the kids who are in foster care. This happens everywhere because if you recall from last week, there is absolutely no common type for this. Your radar is not going to pick it up, okay? Because they're like totally practiced at hiding it from you. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So anyway, this week we're going to talk about some very specific things too. We're going to talk about what's called the bullshit effect. Okay, we're also going to talk about, sort of the importance of these diagnostic tools, like the importance of using polygraph as a tool to get at the actual truth. And you'll see how the stories change depending on the sort of the level of interrogation, I guess you could say. We're also going to talk about what's the prognosis for recidivism. And finally, let's fight back, okay? Because this is not something you could sort of sit back and laugh at. Oh, those crazy guys. No. This is having a devastating impact on young people, okay? And so we're going to tackle those issues tonight. Now, a little light housekeeping, if you don't mind. First of all, last Saturday, wonderful time at Umbrella's inaugural Power to End Adverse Childhood Experiences initiative. Peace. It's a peace initiative. Power to End Adverse Childhood Experiences. And this is part of a year-long series of educational workshops and family and community engagement events. Um, Go to the Umbrella website, EMBRELLA.org, and click on the link for events and go to Peace Initiative. And you'll see the brochure for it and all the things that you can do and register for. If you're in New Jersey and you're any part of the child welfare system, I heartily urge you to participate in some way in the Peace Initiative. And so we spent the whole day on Saturday in Secaucus talking about adverse childhood experiences and what would it take to turn an adverse childhood experience into a positive childhood experience, how to turn an ACE into a PCE, a positive childhood experience. And one of the interesting questions that was asked in it, and we'll talk about this in the weeks to come, but one of the questions that was asked, and something that I would like everyone who's listening to this show to sort of think about, right, is what would you like to change in your community? If this is very, very regional. I will tell you like an example. One person said in their area, no one wants to foster and certainly not adopt from foster teenagers because there is no after school available to the teenagers for people who work. So no one is willing to foster in this like sort of whole region of relatively dense population. So that's what they would like to change, is how to have after school programs and things like that. So that could be done. You see, it could be very, very personal to your area or broad, or broad to the state. That's up to you, the state that you're in. But think about it. What would you like? We rail a lot, we complain a lot. What would you actually like to see different in your area? And if you'd like to write that to me, either in Facebook or in the comments field on the YouTube channel, that'd be great. Or you could email to me at greg@ageoutangels.org. I'd love to hear from you. So anyway, that more on the Peace Initiative at another time. And I just want to say hi to all of the folks that I've met um, as I've gone around and presented the Bridges to Employment program in all of the different places, in the Bergen County, New Jersey Aging Out event, and in the Umbrella events that took place, and seeing people recently in the most recent event, which was the New Jersey Task Force um, for Child Abuse and Neglect, Task Force for Child Abuse and Neglect. All of these different organizations, the New Jersey Child Placement Advisory Council, that have had in-person events, ones who have given me a chance to speak and present the Bridges to Employment program, because it's killing me, people. It is killing me. I want to tell you this. There's money out there. There's money that kids could be having. I was speaking to a girl the other day, and I said to her, "Are you getting your tutor? Are you in touch with your tutor?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "What subject are you taking?" And she said, "Science." And I said, "Why aren't you taking math? That's your next test." And she said, "No, I know everything I need to know for math. I just need to study for science now." And I said, "Well, if you know everything you need to know for math, why don't you just take the test immediately?" And what happens is kids get something in their head about what school is and completely miss the point, okay? So I just want to tell you real quick, okay? This is what school is. It's not about diplomas. It's not about diplomas. It's not about credits, okay? Not about anything that school has told you it's about. School is about your grade level equivalent. So you can have a diploma or not have a diploma. But if your grade level equivalent, that means your skill level equals a certain grade. Every grade has a group of skills assigned to it. And yours measure up to 10th grade in reading and math, reading and language and math. If you do that, then doors open. And if you can't do that, then no doors open. You're minimum wage or warehouse. You can make money at a warehouse without a high school diploma, but you break your back. You work all night. You can't make money doing it, though. It's not necessary. It's not necessary. I know some of you out there are smart. I know you were so smart that you figured you were getting away with something when you ditched in high school. I know others of you just couldn't somehow get to the high school for whatever the reason is, you know? Maybe you were bullied. I don't know. Maybe you just didn't feel like going and there was nobody there pushing you. But there's money out there. You don't have to live in poverty. You don't have to live getting subsidized by the state, which is just like having their foot on your neck. They can take that money out from you anytime they please. You know that. You know that's true. And you know it's actually getting less every year. It's not getting more. That those state subsidy things are getting less. They're not getting more. Bridges to employment. There's never been a program like this. Never been a program like this. And when it's over, there probably won't be one like this again. Okay. Call me 609-306-0821. Email me directly, greg@ageoutangels.org, or private message me on Facebook if you like. Okay, let's jump inside the mind of a sex offender. Not an easy place to be, and I want to remind you, just as last week, all of this comes from a presentation from a rather remarkable subject matter expert on this subject named Corey Jewel Jensen, and she is out of Portland, Oregon, I believe. And this really represents her lifetime of research, and someday I'd like to get her on the program to really go over it in depth with us. And it turns out it took her like years to get the research part of this right. This is stuff that had never been done before, trying to climb inside the mind of someone who has inappropriate, criminal sexual relationships with children. Takes years to draw detailed information out of sex offenders. And she has this information, and what they discovered is absolutely jaw dropping. It truly is. We've been looking at it wrong, not totally wrong, but not focused in the right places, because where we've been focused on the guy in the van, friendly stranger in the black sedan, right? Do you remember that song? It was a good band, the Ides of March. I'm the friendly stranger in a black sedan, won't you hop inside my car? I got pictures, got candy, I'm a lovable man. Goodness gracious. And I'm sure that wasn't intended to be written as child sexual molestation music. But, that's sort of what came to represent child molestation, was that van. And that really isn't, that's 0.5% of the crime, and not where our attention should really be that staunchly directed. Where it should be directed at are the pros, the people who are absolute professionals at doing this. And the conviction rate is 3%. So this is a crime that law enforcement misses 97% of the time. And you know what that means? Here's what it means. There are professionals who target children of all ages. This is not about gender, okay? This does not necessarily mean that a person was sexually abused, because that's not necessarily how it happens, okay? But the point is, by the time they're caught, they may have done 200 to 300 crimes. They get caught for one thing. So something I had never considered, and which we all need to consider, is the incredible breadth and duration over which most of these crimes takes place. And what's frustrating is the offender can be charged with, the crime he's caught for, what he's caught doing, and add a plea bargain to that mix. Felony becomes a misdemeanor. And the thing is, you can't use radar. It can be anyone, because the way that it comes about in this form, and this is about 60%, okay? The way it comes about in this form is that a person sort of develops a maladaptive behavior through innocent play, like you show me yours, I'll show you mine. And most of the other kids in that group, or the other person that you do that with, goes on and moves on to the next game because that's just a moment in time for them. But for this person who grows up in that maladaptive mindset, it's too good. Like they like it too much and they want to share it with others and don't realize, that it's a maladaptive behavior that they're growing up into. They know what they're doing when they're adults. They know the difference between right and wrong. So don't. Okay. Um, and the thing is, it might not necessarily be male. I thought it might be interesting to just take a look, and because they actually have categories of of women who molest children. Okay, and the one that is best known, of course, is the teacher slash lover. Mary Kayla Tourneau was the offender seeking a loving sexual relationship with a victim who's usually an adolescent male who is troubled and needy. That's they know how to pick them. They do target with certain things in mind. Okay, then there's the seducer type. The example that they gave for that is a woman named Deborah LaFave. Offender seduces victim for lust, power, revenge, or simply recreational sex. Then there's the molester. The molester abuses younger children, possibly her own children. She gets aroused to children, more likely pedophilic, personal. She probably has a personal abuse history. Then there's the woman who's the helper. She aids or collaborates with another person to offend. She may procure victims, observe, or actively participate. Does Ghislaine Maxwell come to mind in that? And then there's the one, um, the coercer, the one who is coerced in an abusive relationship, dominated or controlled by another person. She's a past victim of abuse. Um, I'm getting a note here on the chat. The Office of Sex Offenders Sentencing, Monitoring, Apprehending, Registering, and Tracking reports several types of sex offender typologies. Yes, that's the word that they use to refer to it, as a typology, a type, including child abusers who are fixated or regressed. And then there's a note here: be careful not to downplay or offend those who are abused by rapists, who are categorized as power, reassurance, assertive, anger. I don't know, the sentence kind of falls apart there, so I'm not sure exactly what it is that they're trying to tell me. So I'm going to move on. Okay. But I thought it might be interesting for you to be aware of the typologies. There's our new word for tonight, of women who molest children: the teacher lover, the seducer, the molester, the helper, and the person who's been abused and is being coerced. Um, so what are crimes that people are aware of? Well, most people don't consider fondling as having sex, but as we discussed last week, according to the University of Chicago, it's among the three subsets under sexual assault, the other two being rape and incest. So we have to bear in mind that when we're talking about inappropriate sexual relationships with children, fondling, is also a big part of that. And of course, the place where it frequently starts in this particular typology, which is 60% of the deal, is show and tell. It can be that innocent. It can be that innocent, and that evolves into an adult who could be fixated on children or who is only comfortable with a specific age. It's about age, okay? It's about age. It's not about gender. It's not about male, female, or any of that stuff. It's about age. So the bullshit effect is part of fighting back. This is part of fighting back. You understand that these are professionals who groom children. They look for the weak. They look to exploit the weak. They groom the children. They groom you, right? You understand. You know that they're prepared if they get caught. They understand exactly how to talk to police, how to talk to the cameras. They know how to talk. The child doesn't. They are so believable, it's ridiculous. Okay. But the thing is, We need to empower you. We want people to be able to call BS on things offenders may say or do in their presence. And now if you have this experience, if you start to understand what it is that you'll be looking for, then you'll be able to make that call down the road, and act with confidence to report it. And this is something that I want to say to you now, and I'm going to say it to you again at the end of the show today, okay? The litmus test is, would I do that? Or does that make sense? Okay? Would I do that? Or does that make sense? There are lots of different studies in the book Predators. It states that fewer than 5% of sex offenders are ever apprehended. Typical defense arguments: Your Honor, the defendant is requesting leniency. I'm sorry, that was a Freudian slip. I'll do it again. Your Honor, the defendant is requesting leniency in sentencing because he has shown himself to be a generally law-abiding and responsible citizen, does not have a criminal record, has a good job, and this is his first offense. There's no such thing. There is no such thing as getting caught in a first offense. It's just so very wrong. So, okay, another study. How many do we catch? 100 children sexually abused. 5 to 16 out of that 100 will disclose, and then 3 to 6% are ultimately convicted. That's what we're talking about here. Another, violence against women, the justice gap in sexual assault cases. Of the rape cases, 100 that are reported to police, only 20 to 30, fewer than 16%, or 1 in 6, will result in an arrest and incarceration. This is not a heavily considered problem in enforcement. In the whole enforcement thing. So now something very interesting happens when they do get caught and they start to go through a group of interviews that may culminate with a polygraph. Okay? And what happens is, as they go through each step of the clinical process, there's this sort of tendency to underreport and then progressively become more and more honest, depending on what's in front of them. There's a sex offenders in Texas, and on supervision in Colorado, less than 1% of victims had been identified in official records. Then after a polygraph process, 14 times more crimes were reported than originally detected. And there's all kinds of, sort of different studies that show to varying degrees the importance and the impact of the polygraph. There's a study called The Value of Polygraph Testing in Sex Offender Management, and male victims pre-polygraph 20% report, post-polygraph 39%. So you see almost double. Female victims are more willing to report. Pre-polygraph 89%, post 95%. Still more though. Still more. Here's both male and female victims. This is now, we're talking about the offender. The offender saying that they have molested both male and female victims. 9% pre-polygraph, 35% post-polygraph. So there's something very, very, very important about getting proper data and knowing exactly what's going on here. And the way to do that seems to be, by using a polygraph. This is an interesting one. This is from a report called Sexual History Disclosure Using the Polygraph in a Sample of British Sex Offenders in Treatment. Age of onset. When did they start doing this? Pre-polygraph, the average age was 28. Post-polygraph, it was 13. 13. What do you think about that, huh? That makes a huge difference. After beginning specialized treatment in various programs, sex offenders initially underreported the number of sex crimes by 5 to 75 times. This is from a 2016 study. Typical number of child victims was 8 to 13. Average number of events per victim was 10, 80 to 130 crimes. That's what we're talking about. This is perpetrated by one person. This is perpetrated by one person. That's the part that this is so pervasive. That's sitting back and not doing anything about it is almost not an option because this is part of the adverse childhood experiences, if you will, that combine to make all of the trauma that completely debilitate some of these children when they hit their teen years and their young adult years. I mean, this is very, very, very serious consequences down the road. And the idea of raiding a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C. because you think someone's running a sex ring is just, lunacy when, oh God, all that energy, all that save the children energy, could be certainly um, uh, directed towards where 60% of the crime is. So, what's the prognosis rather, sorry, for recidivism? I mean, what do you think? These, when I first heard about this, I thought 0% won't recommit when they get out. I thought it's not possible. It's not possible to have those kinds of urges, and then not, because for you and me, the kind of relations, intimate relations that we have with, with your spouse or your partner, are with people of age, I guess, or near close age. How crazy can I be with this? Because my parents were actually almost 25 years apart, but they didn't date when my mother was underage. Is the thing. They were older, but they're 25 years apart. So there's a point where that's okay, but it's not okay when it's someone who's under the age of consent, and that's very obvious. And that's where the sickness is. And if you can't control that, and you know the difference between right and wrong, then what makes you think when you get out of prison, where I'm told they actually learn better how to ply their craft, so it'll be harder for them to get caught next time. Okay, that's what they learn in prison. When they get out here, they're going to, not reoffend, right? But again, a million different studies and sort of different kind of takes on it. Well, first of all, let's make it absolutely positively clear that anyone who is convicted of this should never be around children again. Never. Okay? Never. That's never. Okay, so now sexual and violent recidivism by the offender type, actuarial risk, reoffending rates for rapists, child molesters, and mixed offenders. Of those offenders who were detected reoffending, 37% of men with previous convictions for adult rape were found to have recidivated against child victims. I don't know if that number 37% moves you or doesn't. I mean, it's for me, any number here, like one, like not percent, but like one, the number one. And offenders should never ever be permitted to be around children. But there are other studies that do sort of contradict some of that stuff, and you got to be aware of that because someone may throw this garbage up in your face someday. There's one study from 2014, Hansen, Harris, Helmus, and Thornton. High-risk offenders may not be high risk forever. 7,740 offenders from 21 samples. It's one of those retro studies. Recidivism rates were highest in the first few years following release. and what they considered highest in the first few years, 22% for high risk within 5 years. 22% for high risk within 5 years of release. Overall recidivism was 16% over 15 years. Recidivism rate for low risk offenders was 5%. Recidivism risk for high risk offenders was 32%. And then here's another meta-analysis published in the Journal of Experimental Criminology from 29 studies, combined sample of 10,387 sex offenders. 5,000 were actually treated sex offenders and 5,400 untreated sex offenders. 13.7% recidivism rate for the untreated group, 10.1 recidivism rate for the treated group overall. The difference was 3.6%. The evidence basis for sex offender treatment is not yet satisfactory. They're saying that the evidence for the treatment, that this study was trying to determine whether or not there's evidence to treat them, not yet satisfactory, that difference. So I guess what they're saying there is the treatment has to get better in order to make those numbers go up. But so nonetheless, these folks get out and they I don't, I'm saying, and they reoffend, but you know what? I'm sure some don't. So for the 5 of you who don't, God bless you. I'm sorry. I apologize. But for the percentage of you that does, and it's hard for me to believe it's not a big percent. It's the number, man. It's the number, the way you commit 90, 80, 150, 300 crimes. That can't stay. That can't be that way. Now, there's a study called The Big Lie About Sex Offenders, and then we're going to have to find out who Radley Balco is. The Watch, as reported in the Washington Post, March 9th, 2017. Here's the quote. In the most comprehensive single study on reoffense rates to date, the U.S. Department of Justice followed every sex offender released in almost 15 states for 3 years. The recidivism rate, just 3.5%. These numbers have been subsequently verified in study after study. So they say 3.5%, 15 states. You can always make it sound less using the percent, I suppose. But then you have to realize that that percentage represents a real number. And that real number represents real people. Okay? And so you got to fight back. If you're a parent, you're it. If you're a parent, you're it. You have to fight back. If you're a foster parent, oh my God. If you're a foster parent, you are housing the low-hanging fruit. If you're a single parent, even a single dad, even a single dad, single mother, certainly. You're harried, you're trying to make ends meet. Or maybe you have plenty of money, but you're a busy business person. You got to make that money somehow. Whatever it happens to be, wherever your vulnerability is, there's this one study from 2002 that answered, why does grooming work? Grooming works because most adults don't know what to look for, and most adults don't want to see it or believe it. How does grooming work? By targeting specific children, families, and communities to exploit. The message here is don't be the low-hanging fruit. Seducing the child and the adults. You are seductible. And this is, to me, the telltale sign that says they know the difference between right and wrong. Okay, they know the difference between right and wrong because they prepare for disclosure. They prepare for confrontation. They are prepared for it. Okay, and each experience teaches them more and more, and they learn from that constant availability of of information of how to do this job. It's their job, you know. It's their job of how to um, it's the job of how to seduce, and they are professionals. There's no way to say it any other way. They're absolute professionals. And so what do you do? You know, what do you do? You have to fight back. You have to, but it's not fighting back with guns and sticks and knives. This is first of all, you have to do it from the child's side. Okay, talking to children about sexual abuse. Okay, starting at a young age, age appropriate, you know, but your private parts are private and special, right? If anyone, and emphasize, it could be anyone, could be anyone touching, touching, touching's a problem. Someone touching, that word touching in their heads, and especially secret touching or anything with the word secret. Okay. Understand this is not a sickness. This is more like stealing and lying. You know, these guys use all kinds of tricks to keep kids from telling. So imagine to yourself, if you were a kid, how would they keep you from telling? You know, I'll tell your mom's boss and she'll get fired and you won't have a house. If you keep the secret, I won't be mad at you and you won't be in trouble. These guys will sort of get to know all the people in the orbit. You know, who are all the people um, that they can tell. And you do the same with your child. Um, Talk about your child. How would they keep you from telling? What could they say to you? What could they say to you? That they'd kill mom and dad? You know, what could they say to you that would keep you from telling? Teach them the tricks, okay? You tell them that you won't be mad at them, that they won't be in any trouble if they talk to you. Let them know who the safe people are, who they can tell, okay? And, you know, blend sex abuse checkups, you know, with other safety talks, because you talk about other safety things, right, with your kids. Teach your kids how to cross the street, look left and right, then look left again. Is that what you teach? At some point, I hope they learn that. So have this be part of safety talks. It's just part of general. If you just make it be sort of a normal part, and you're really kind of supposed to do this several times a year. Um, one of the most important things when you're talking to your children is make sure you use real words for genitalia. There are lots and lots of stories about sex offenders who assign, pet names to genitalia, so that if the child talks about it, no one even knows, you know, what they're talking about, because they're talking about, you know, cookies or something like that. So it's very important that you have these discussions with your child. Now, something else that's important to remember too. Okay, when you're listening to someone, try to alibi out of it. Okay. When you're listening to someone, try to alibi out of it. You're going to hear some of these specific responses. Um, it was out of my control. It just happened. I wasn't even thinking about it. It wasn't for the reasons you think it was. I couldn't help it. I'm a sex addict, and it wasn't even about the fact that the pictures were of children. It was someone else's fault. It's not like I'm actually hurting anyone. You're going to hear them say all kinds of excuses. if they get actually caught. If they get actually caught, that's when the whole part about uh, I'm as much a victim, or I was a victim, or uh, here I said it was an accident, a mistake, or the first time something like this has ever happened. I told them that I felt terrible about it and I would be willing to go to therapy. I told them that it would ruin my life if they reported me. I told them it was the child's fault. I told them I'd been molested as a child. You got to understand, nobody, nobody molests children for any other reason than they wanted to have sex with a child. That's the only reason. It didn't just happen. I couldn't figure, I don't know it. None of that matters. The only reason a person has sex with a child is because they want to have sex with a child. Here's more. This is from something called lying. It's easy. I shrugged it off without acting alarmed, then denied it and said it was just a misunderstanding. I said I couldn't believe people who would believe I couldn't believe people would believe I was that kind of a person who would do something like that. I said I would not admit to something I didn't do. I said I was never alone with her and they believed me. I denied it all and acted appalled and hurt that someone would accuse me of that. I said my wife was out to get me and coached her. I said my brother-in-law always wanted me out of the family and this was his way of doing it. None of 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 it. That's when you can smell it. Okay. That's the moment right there. Okay. That is the moment right there when you know you're hearing a story. And if you hear that story, pray that it's not coming from a direct link to your child. Okay. Pray that it's not coming from a direct link to your child. First of all, do research in your neighborhood, know who's in your neighborhood, but it's not always going to be that easy as locating a sex offender. It's sort of more like knowing who's in charge, who's in charge of the children in your area, who takes on the youth groups, who's the person, who finds themselves around children a lot, who's the person who does that. And it doesn't hurt you to know 3 or 4 or 5 people around town um, who can do that, and your gut means something. I'll tell you, man, one time I was actually running a Boy Scout meeting and a lot of the parents were there. I think we were serving a dinner that night. And one of the parents came up and started talking to me. And then about an hour or two later, I went over to one of the other scout leaders there and I just said, hey, that guy? Like, does he like have an alcohol problem? And everybody said, oh, I don't know nothing about it. I don't know. I never heard anything about it. And I said, because he kind of, he smells a little bit like alcohol. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you come to a scout meeting where you're not even allowed to have, you can't say the word alcohol at a scout meeting. It's absolutely forbidden. Why would you show up tanked? Anyway, I didn't think anything of it again until about a year later when I heard the cat was in rehab. So there, it's your gut talking to you, and ignoring it sometimes is at your own peril. But that doesn't mean you can just automatically tell who these guys are. You got to look for the signs. You got to look for the grooming. Is your child being groomed? Who's that guy now that your kid can't stop talking about? Who's that guy who is making your life so much easier by taking that kid off your hands and and won't even take money. He just loves doing it. Make him dinner once in a while. There, now he's got better access into your home as he grooms you as well. So that's my story, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sticking to it. It's this has been like a really kind of sad 2 weeks for me, knowing this. And the only thing that I can tell you is there's got to be some kind of a way to promote the idea of having this information and this lady available to school boards. She's just one person. She's probably made some training videos and things like that. But she's just one person. But this information should be at every school board, at every PTA, in parent meetings and things like that, in civic groups, in church groups, in every kind of group. This should be shared everywhere. So I don't know. Maybe you guys will help me do that. I'm kind of hoping that you will. That's all we have time for tonight. I want to thank you for listening at home. Um, next week we have a guest, and I will tell you who that is. Next week, our guest is Alicia Smith. Ooh, Alicia Smith. This is going to be a big one, ladies and gentlemen. She is the Associate Clinical Director of the Society for the Prevention of Teen Suicide. Big time stuff. Sad again, but hey, this is for the prevention of teen suicide. And maybe as we talk about all this sad stuff having to do with um, children being sexually abused, maybe we can help stop some of it. Think about it. 60% of the cases, every time a percentage point goes down, it's probably tens of thousands of actual human beings. 1 percentage point makes such a huge difference in this stuff. That's why I couldn't understand it when 3 percentage points didn't matter to those people who studied the difference between treated and non-treated sex offenders in 15 states. That's a lot of actual bodies. Anyway, next week, yeah, we're going to talk about the Society for the Prevention of Teen Suicide. As for this week's, thanks for staying with me. Thanks for hanging in there for the hour. And thanks to our producer, Robin, our engineer, Ruben. Music provided by Mozart. Stay safe, everybody. And remember how important it is to prevent this from happening to your children, because it's really hard to take care of it after the fact. Until next time, let's remember it's only Monday. There's still plenty of time to make this week the best week ever. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Ruben.
You're welcome, Greg. Have a great week. You and Robin.
Okay, bye.